We're going right in today, ladies and gentlemen. Mike Erre, Tim Stafford. Tim's troubled times really set the bar low for the week, and somehow the week surpassed the low that was set. We're recording this on Friday. On Wednesday, Charlie Kirk was murdered, assassinated, evidently. We literally just finding out right before we came on about the identity of the shooter. And yeah, I mean, even, this is Friday, you'll get it Monday. Who knows what will change between now and then. And, we have all sorts of stuff planned along the lines of the Lord's Prayer. And then this stuff happens. And, part of how a church and a podcast differ is that we can talk about things on a more national basis than a lot of what we talk about in our church community. And so I don't know how far we'll get into this, but we but I think we want to talk a bit about this. And not only did that happen, but there was a school shooting in Colorado. Somebody had tweeted out, we interrupt this high school shooting for a shooting on a college campus. And so I think a lot of us Wednesday, Thursday, Friday have just felt really bad. Yeah. For loads of different reasons. Tim Stafford, initial thoughts?
I don't know. I'm trying not to have initial thoughts. Like that, just because that's kind of what everybody's doing, right? Is having a really quick emotional take on things. And I mean, I was in the classroom when all this happened on Wednesday, and I got a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-old conservative white men in my classrooms, which was a large portion of Kirk's demographic that he spoke to. And so we were getting ready for our first essays for the semester, and so some of those students were immediately like, can we write about this? And I was like, well, how so? Like, what are you thinking? And they wanted to write opinion pieces, and the paper they're writing right now is not opinionated, so I had to kind of steer through that. But then at the end of class, I was just like, look, guys, you're going to hear a lot of really like incendiary things from all different directions over the next few days. You're going to hear so much emotional rhetoric, and it's going to behoove you to take a breath before each thing as you try to process what you're hearing, to take a breath before you respond, because it's just going to be a lot. And it turned out to be a lot. But it's hard for anybody to process this stuff, and it should be hard to process this stuff. But I don't know. It's like just feel like you're in a cesspool of swirling. It's just carnage, 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 and then language about provoking carnage, 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 carnage. And I don't know. I was actually thinking a lot about, I don't remember how far back the series was, or even what the series was. But with the troubled times from last week, and asking about like, what do we do in a post-truth society, right? Like our president came out and was blaming people before they even had a suspect in mind, and kind of riling things up. And I was thinking about, and again, I can't remember exactly what thing it was, but the true thing in love, like what that means. Yes. What does that mean in this time period?
Yes.
Because that, and then the three things that you kind of went through last week with how community responds to, how community postures itself in these times, how community responds in these times. What does true thing in love mean a day, in a time period like this? Because I think we need it really, really bad in this current climate. Like, and I don't know how to do it. Like I texted you last night. I was at a board meeting. Yeah. And it's the rhetoric may change topic, but the language stays the same in demonization language. And I'm exhausted is what I really am. I'm tired of these conversations. I'm tired of witnessing so much anger and wrath on behalf of from humans to humans. And, it just starts to feel like you are in a huge ocean that you cannot get out of, just waves crashing over, and you just have no, like, I can only hold my breath for so long, or I can only paddle for so long. So I don't know, Mike. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to respond. I don't know what posture to hold.
Yeah. I think a lot of us feel that way. I mean, I had posts, and I have friends and family members who, are huge fans. And one pastor friend posted something about, hey, Jesus was persecuted for too, right? For his views too. And so Charlie was an outspoken Christian, and, now is with Jesus because he lived in that same way. And then there are other people who are saying things like, if you claim to be a Christian yet stand for racism, sexism, bigotry, and a lack of love and respect for others, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting in this, I like cesspool. I think we can agree at the very start that Charlie Kirk is worth grieving.
Yeah.
The death of any image bearer ever is worth grieving. And so,
what I couldn't stop thinking about is I unfortunately saw, as I was on Twitter trying to gauge reactions and watch the news, because I feel like I have to be somewhat informed because of the fact that I'm in the classroom and these are things that come up. Unfortunately saw some of those videos of what happened, like very close up, which is not stuff you can erase from your brain. But all I can think about is, like, his kids will grow up in a that's publicly available footage. Like, that's just regardless of any circumstance of the situation, that's really heinous.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to do. Immediately, I mean, I texted you. There was a school shooting in Orange County also, and then in Huntington Beach, there was a neo-Nazi rally in response to this, and it was, what is it, like, white men fight back or something is what they were chanting, and they're carrying American flags, they're carrying Republican flags, and they were carrying Jesus flags and chanting that. And it's just like, this is, I don't know, just that's a lot to process.
Yeah. Yep. I've been thinking about so regardless of your individual feelings, our individual feelings, what does a kingdom response look like versus a kind of partisan response? What's the difference? Should there be a difference? Is there a difference?
Yes.
Yeah, you'd think, right? Because we talk a lot about upside down kingdom. And so I put together two lists of what a partisan response might look like and what a kingdom response might look like. Not that I'm an expert on anything other than my own sinfulness, but I've just been trying to think through, okay, is there anything distinct about the way Christians should respond to something like this? And so at our worst, I think partisan responses are, the first thing we want to do is rush to blame. It's got to be some ideology. It's got to be some person that fits in some box somewhere. We've got to figure out who's to blame. That's job number one. We don't mourn. We don't lament. We don't grieve. We go straight to blame. And there's a rush to figure out the agenda, the identity of the shooter so that we can co-opt it for political purposes. Promising retribution. The number of celebratory messages that were out there about his murder, and then the number of promises of civil war, and the left hates us and it's time to fight back. And you're just like, okay, well, that's certainly a response. Lumping, once you find out the identity of the shooter, lumping the shooter into an entire people group and then assigning guilt and blame to all of them. That's a very partisan thing to do. Make sure you absolutize conversation. Don't ever reflect on complex legacies. Just it's all or nothing, and then you get to the deride and mock the pain of others, and so that seems like a partisan response, at least the beginnings of how you recognize a partisan response. Would you agree with that assessment so far, Timothy John?
Yeah, I had friends that were in the celebratory camp and friends that were in the lionization martyr camp, and everything in between.
Totally. So if joyful, gracious noncompliance is a place of standing in the world, and this is so, I keep coming back to it because it's been really important, I think, for Tim and I both to understand it this way, that following Jesus is a place of understanding and standing in the world where I don't need to do the normal things to win. In fact, winning isn't even a category for my advocacy in the world. And joy gets unpacked in a letter like Philippians, where Paul challenges people who, some estimate 40% of his church were Roman citizens because the city was so heavily populated by ex-Roman soldiers who were given citizenship from the Battle of Actium. And this was a colony that boasted about their Romanness. This is the only place Paul addresses citizenship directly. Your citizenship, our citizenship, is in the heavens, which doesn't mean I live somewhere else and I'm going there when I die. Rather, it means I live according to the complete upside down set of values and priorities embodied in Jesus of Nazareth and held in community in his church. And the words used to describe that posture are words like exile, stranger, foreigner, refugee, like all throughout 1st and 2nd Peter. This is the language of Jewish diaspora now applied to the church, that we're no longer bounded by nation state allegiances. We're bounded in the body of Christ through siblingship. And that siblingship manifests in an action in the world, but that action never requires violence in any way, shape, or form to accomplish its end. The kingdom cannot come that way.
But you can go back one episode to hear exactly that.
But then something like this happens. And so if you have such standing, and I'm not saying such standing is easy to hold on to or easy to grasp, or you're unshakable in that, but so much, like, even Hebrews, we come to a mountain that's not like Mount Zion. We come to a mountain that's unshakable. And there's all of this sort of perseverance language throughout the New Testament about, because every time I think the world is dark, I go back and I read about the Roman Empire during the time of the earliest Christians.
Right.
And our dark isn't their dark. It's its own unique dark, and there are aspects of our culture that are uniquely dark in the history of the world. But none of this has ever threatened the vibrancy of the church, interestingly enough. And so if people can get to the place where we stand looking at the world, not from some morally superior place, because that's not it at all, right? That's the self-righteous line. That's the Pharisaical line. If we stand from a place of, the binaries that the world is operating in accordance with don't define where I fit in the world. I belong to a group that practices a completely different kind of allegiance and politic.
Or should.
And so that's the idea, right? I'm not just saved to heaven, but I'm saved into a community that's defined by Jesus as king, which is a political statement. Then you would think the response should be different. And so I was just thinking along the lines of, I grieve this shooting. I grieve for Charlie Kirk. I grieve for his widow. I grieve for his children. I grieve for my friends and family members who grieve for him. I grieve for our culture.
Yeah.
And so is there a Christian posture that we can inhabit when talking about these things or feeling these things? Now, I'm not saying that there aren't unchristian things that I'm feeling too. Of course there are. All sorts of things but those things aren't actions in the world. Those are just things that are part of my sinful humanity, and that I'm at work with Jesus in transforming.
That's part of it, though, right? Is like, I don't know what your list is, so I don't want to take from it, but
no, do it.
Learning how, like, just the fact that there's so rarely a perfectly wide road, straight line through any topic.
Mm-hmm.
And when people present it that way, that's when I really think about like the don't trust anyone who doesn't walk with a limp kind of mentality of like, all this stuff takes work, and it is nuanced, and it is multifaceted, and human beings are complicated and diverse and all these different things. So the way in which we posture ourselves, that's one of the reasons why when I see people advocating for community as a response to these things, I'm like, yes, 4 brains are better than 1 brain. Like we can lean on each other when we're exhausted and despair and want to react.
Yes.
In really nefarious ways to something. That's one of the benefits of community, is the accountability and the transparency of like being with one another and being able to prop me up when I am feeling weak, and I'll prop you up when you're feeling weak. And there's just something really practically beautiful about navigating life that way.
Right.
You just see it. You just see the necessity of it.
Yeah, for sure. But with community comes mess, because there are some in the community who are celebrating, and some who are grieving, and some who are angry at those who are celebrating, and some who are angry at those who are grieving. And now all of a sudden we have a whole new, a new tension introduced into the community. So it's much easier just to either sit by yourself or stand in echo chambers.
Totally.
And that's why the place of standing in the world is the absolute prerequisite to even having some of these conversations. If you don't understand the Christian life as a place of community carved out by the example and teaching and person of Jesus, where I don't have to behave any longer to the normal modes of American life, then, because I'm safe, I'm protected by the community, I'm protected by God himself. And I don't mean protected from bad things. I just mean ultimately, I am secure in God's good world, not physically, not financially, not health-wise. I'm secure, though, in the fundamental aspects of my being. If we really believe that story, and we believe our place of standing doesn't play by the rules of normal modes of American life, then I think we can offer a Christian response. And I'm not saying this is the Christian response. I'm just starting out with saying, well,
there's also 2 people trying to process this stuff in
real time. Yeah, we just literally hit record. We didn't talk much about this prior. It seems like if you're an exile and a stranger, and I have 5 pages of notes, but 5 or 6 things. So we'll see. Number 1, it seems like you would condemn all acts of violence equally. That there wouldn't be a range or a gradation of some violence is, that not as important as other violence. Like you would think, if we're exiles and foreigners who believe that every person is made in the image of God, that we as Jesus followers could never, ever, ever celebrate harm. Yeah. Whatever our disagreements, rejoicing at the murder of somebody violates, so much. All of the scripture's admonitions about the Imago Dei, like things like Proverbs, don't rejoice when your enemy falls. Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Do not overcome evil. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Like, okay, so you're sitting there saying, we have to be consistent in the denunciation of all violence, regardless of whether or not it's against or towards our perceived enemies. Right? So we have to consistently denounce violence towards all people. End of story. It doesn't matter if they're immigrants, it doesn't matter if they're transgendered, it doesn't matter if they're Republican, if they're white, if they're and I know we all agree with this in theory, but not every political death hits the same way. For instance, we just had a far-right extremist disguised as a law enforcement officer killed a Minnesota state representative and her husband and then seriously wounded a state senator and his wife. That was in June. And there was no flags at half staff for that. There were no moments of silence for that. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be. I'm just noting that we have very selective memories when we're engaged in partisan politics and the accusation cycle of blame. But standing from a place of exile foreigner, we just simply can look and say, regardless of who it's against, it's wrong. End of story. No, nothing more to say. I think, so that's one, is that we condemn all political violence. Our response to political violence should be the same, always. There's no variation in our response. It's all wrong, all the time, forever, against anyone. No one ever deserves this.
Ultimate denigration of human life.
Yes. Well, Bernie Sanders, who I don't know a ton about, but he put out a video that I thought was brilliant. He just said, political violence is political cowardice, because it means you cannot persuade people to your point of view using words. You have to use force.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, that's actually a gospel thing too, because Jesus never begged, bribed, he never coerced, he just invited people through the work of his life, the work of his power, the authority of his teaching. So first of all, I think because we stand as foreigners and exiles, we can condemn all violence everywhere. And we should have long memories about who has been hurt and how they've been hurt. I don't think we should just get into the cycle of, well, it's only one direction or whatever else. I just think we can, from a position of standing, say, nope, it's always wrong forever. Nothing ever deserves this. So that's first. Number two, I think as kingdom people, we tell the truth about legacies of people. One of the things the Bible does, that is one of the reasons why I trust the Bible, is it honors complex people. And so, doggone it, you read Abram, and here's a man of faith, here's a man of cowardice, here's a man of faith, here's a man of selling out his wife, here's a man of faith, here's a man of total abuse to Hagar, right? I mean, you just go back and forth, and the Bible just records all of it, whether it's Peter or Paul or Mary. Mary doesn't have a complex legacy, but I was just making a joke about the band. Whether it's the list of kings, right? Whether it's the patriarchs, like the legacy, or even church history, right? You get Martin Luther, who scholars distinguish between his early writings and his late writings. His early writings are the Lutheranism that we know. His late writings were some of them were unbelievably anti-Semitic and unbelievably anti-Christian in the sense that they were so anti-Jewish.
Yeah.
And so, like with James Dobson, like with John MacArthur, we honor complex legacies. We tell the truth. There were some things that Charlie Kirk said that I cannot reconcile with being under the influence of the lordship of Jesus. There are things that James Dobson's legacy created that I cannot reconcile with the kingdom of Jesus. There are things that right? We just have to be able to tell the truth about people.
It's interesting because you think about the ones you just said and how lionization in the long term, is that where we get such large denominational splits? Like when you're unwilling to wrestle with the complicated nature of somebody. Yeah. And you're just like, I'm all in because I don't want to wrestle with it or whatever.
Totally.
It's interesting to look back in that way.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the church should be the place where you can hold both the reality of fallenness and the reality of redemption together.
Yeah.
And that's so hard for us.
For that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean, it seems so people making judgments about this individual salvation, I just think that's totally out of bounds. I have no idea. There are parts of my life that are not aligned with Christ. And so I'm a complex legacy too. But I do think we can talk about the things that hurt and harm others. I think we can talk about the isms that have captured large swaths of people. And do real harm in the world. I do think those legacies have to be named and opposed and grieved. And so I just think as people, we can honor complex legacies. That doesn't mean we do it right away, but it's like with Martin Luther King Jr. We can acknowledge that there were some unsavory parts of his life while still holding him up as a champion in an incredibly Christ-like manner for something that Jesus himself would have advocated for.
Yeah, what is it? Just the need to make heroes into infallible?
There's a reverse scapegoating thing that happens, like as you scapegoat, there's a reverse scapegoating thing that happens where we have to lionize folks.
Yeah.
And so I just think a partisan response ignores the bad and only promotes the good, or it promotes all the bad and ignores the good. Exactly. Whereas a kingdom response can simply live in the tension of people being really mixed bags, right? And that's where, like the 12 apostles having halos, in some art. It's like, no, no halos. That's part of the point of the story, is that Jesus was looking at these guys going, guys, have you no faith? I mean, have you not seen? I mean, come on. And so because our Bible does that, with the exception, obviously, of Jesus, then we're able to sit and celebrate the lives of people, mourn their losses and deaths, and recognize complex legacies that come out of their work, because the Bible itself does that. And I think part of that means that we shouldn't restrict speech that is critical of each other. Even though we might find it abhorrent or offensive or grievous, I think part of what it means to tell the truth is to be able to explore, disagree, repent, change my mind, advocate. I think all of that. And one of the reasons why he's being lionized is because he would sit in college campuses and have really difficult conversations around difficult touch points. And you can argue about whether or not that was outrage baiting or whatever. But if the choice of practicing politics comes between sitting across from people and having conversations or threatening political violence, well, then obviously his way is the better way. So that would be number two. And again, who am I? I'm just throwing this out, wondering what this looks like.
But we have to wrestle with this stuff. We're caught in some weird rut where we just keep perpetuating the same scenario over and over again, and it has to stop. And until people are willing to have hard conversations about what it means to change the system, because now, like with this current president, a lot of there's been a larger conversation about the line between free speech and hate speech. And how do you differentiate, and how do you enforce that line? And is it a straight line? Is it a wiggly line? Is it a blurry line? Like this individual would dance on that line a bit. And it's like, how do you, but until we change the way that you're just really seeing the symptoms and causes conversation just exploding.
I mean, if you just took all the Jesus people who were serious about Jesus and had us respond a bit differently, I mean, I think the impact on culture would be immense. Instead of adding to the, So anyway, we I think we condemn all violence equally. And we keep memories of acts of violence that don't let us fall into the amnesia of, well, it's just one side. Nope. The whole mode of American life is based on violence and power over. Doesn't matter what part of the continuum you identify with. It's a mode of life that has to be entirely repudiated. Third thing is we lament. Now, lament is really misunderstood, because lament is the picture of lament that I think people have are like Middle Eastern women who are wailing and beating their breasts. And that is culturally, that's really close to what it would have been like. There were professional mourners who would actually come and mourn, that you would hire in ancient Judaism. And I think there's something beautiful and about a culture that allows outward expressions of grief to that degree and to that intensity. But lament is also a very active, agitated word. It's an action that, so it's grief and outrage that gets filtered through the covenant perspective, right? It's not complaining against God. It's assuming his goodness and then saying, well, God, how come you're not doing these things? And so part of, I think, grief and outrage at gun violence is part of this. I think lamenting gun violence, I think agitating for taking the pain, the disappointment, the hurt, and agitating for gun laws. I don't think we give up on that. I think there is a massive, massive shift coming as younger generation folks get into power and begin voting around guns that I think we absolutely need to revisit. And I think we need to be championing. And so part of what Lament does is Lament calls God to act. And in Lament, God calls us to act. And covenant partnership, right? That's what we do. So I want to pray for the shooter. I want to pray for the victim. I want to pray for the victim's families. I want to pray for the cultural trends that this just exacerbates. I want to pray for those in leadership that they would wise up and come to repentance. I want to, whatever it is. And then I want to agitate for policy. Now that isn't the most Christian thing I do. That's the least Christian thing I do, right? We've talked about that before. And so I want to seek policy solutions that keep guns away. I want to seek to diffuse this tragic combination of love of guns, masculinity, and a form of Christianity that loves power and violence, right? We have to untangle that and give people some other option about what it means to be masculine or to have power or whatever. So Lament, I think, is a very active lament. It's not something that's simply feeling. I think we're invited to channel feeling into action within covenant responsibility. And so my primary covenant responsibility is to my church. And what does it look like there to agitate in Tennessee for common sense laws, and just to have people say, well, that'll never change. That'll never change. Nope, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I'm in a community that says with God, all things are possible. And so I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. You can tell me it's never going to change. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. It may not.
Things have changed.
Some.
We were talking about this morning, like, again, there has been progress on a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And we've just never been this plugged in.
Well, do you know, like where I see it is with Seth. My son has Down syndrome. Cultural, at least in my spheres in California, Ohio, and in Tennessee, cultural acceptance and delight in Seth, my son, is so different when I talk to parents of children who have Down syndrome. Well, they're now adults, right? Who have Down syndrome, and they are in their 40s or 50s. I mean, they just marvel and lament how much better it is, how many more services are provided, how much more acceptance, even though people don't want a Down syndrome child for them, or a child with Down syndrome for themselves. There is a cultural thing. Like Seth was at his little flag football practice, and all these big varsity football players were just coming over and high-fiving Seth. Hi, Seth. Hi, Seth. Hi, Seth. No one was making him do that. So there are places where we really have improved. Absolutely. Number 4.
I only say that because I have to lean into knowing that.
Yeah.
When I'm feeling like I'm falling under the water, like that there are, and you can see it. It's that Mr. Rogers thing again. Like they're going to highlight the spectacle and the violence. They're going to highlight that stuff. There are people that are helping.
Yeah.
Even last night I was at the board meeting to go advocate for some things in the board agenda, and it's just like one of the debated topics was just like bullying protections on kids in the LGBTQ community, and it's like that is law, and it is board policy, and it is the district policy to protect all kids from discrimination and bullying, and that is progress. Now that people are trying to take that away, but it's still, we have progressed to the point in which we are valuing human life. We're trying to value human life across a spectrum. And there's a lot of voices that are trying to take away from that. And like it takes communities to lean into it and say, no, like this is important. This is the gospel.
Yep. Exactly right. And it's our place of standing that doesn't count wins or losses the way that everyone else counts wins and losses. Yeah. We count faithfulness. That's different. Also, I think as important as our denunciations of all violence are, I think the affirmation of all human life is equally important. That and I think this is really important. It doesn't matter whether or not someone deserves worth and dignity. Mm-hmm. We've gotten to this place where, like, I have to say, and I saw this all over, I don't agree with everything he said, but no one deserves this. Like, like you literally have to disclaim everything.
Qualify it, yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think part of the work of the church as a band of exiles, foreigners, and strangers is just to affirm life wherever we find it, regardless of whether or not it's worthy of respect and dignity, simply because it's the Imago Dei. Now, that doesn't mean we don't oppose. It doesn't mean we don't resist. It doesn't mean that we don't counter, that we don't act, that we don't speak against. Nope, not saying any of that. I'm just saying the place of standing requires that if everyone we're dealing with is made in the image of God, and if the powers and principalities are the true enemy, then we do not have to resort to the modes of normal American political discourse to win. We just don't.
Amen.
All of this is easy to say. None of this I want to do when things like this are happening.
No, it's scary.
That's it. Yeah. No, you just said it.
Well, I'm scared for a lot of my friends that are in a public sphere.
Yep.
Who are pushing back and advocating for exactly that, affirming the life of other people, which seems like a no-brainer, just to say, hey, you don't have to agree with their lifestyle, you don't have to agree with anything, but you can agree with the fact that they are a living, breathing human entity, and they deserve support and affirmation.
And Jesus,
and now there's violence towards people that are trying to stand up to that. And I am scared. I am worried for my friends. I'm worried for myself. I'm worried for my family. Mm-hmm. But that's also a privilege to be able to say that I'm worried about those things. So I'm trying to, affirming humanity, affirming that kind of stuff is unfortunately resistance. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is joy and love as non-compliance.
Yep. That's right.
So sorry to tell you, welcome to the resistance.
I have friends everywhere. One of the church historians I love to read, and I don't remember how exactly he said it, but it was something like, the earliest Christians out-thought, out-died, and outlived their neighbors. In other words, they had a branch of church that was engaging in public debate. Hey, you guys say we're cannibals. We're not cannibals. You say we're atheists. We're not atheists. But they also are willing to die for what they believed in. And their manner of life, so that's what he means by outlived. Their manner of life was so out of sync with normal modes of life in the Roman Empire that the early Christians did not need to engage beyond that. So what I'm getting to is Jonathan Haidt, who has done some amazing work around social media, and The Righteous Mind is a book I think I'm going to reread here in the midst of all this. He argued in a paper that speech is never violent. So the idea that there is such a thing as violent speech actually promotes violence then in real life against the persons who have such speech. It's just an interesting, and I don't know if I buy it. I don't know what I think about it. Your thing about free speech versus hate speech and what that means and how that works itself out and how that jives with affirming the dignity of people, whether or not they're canceled. I mean, all of those things, I don't know yet. I just know it was an interesting, because there is a whole, I've used the phrase rhetorical violence before. Mm-hmm. And he's pointing violence out, well, yeah, but just even should what forms of speech should be outlawed? I mean, that's the classic question. And so anyway, somehow this relates to affirming the dignity of people, to give them choice, to respect their freedom to believe and live and talk otherwise. I think as the church, moving on, we refuse to scapegoat people in groups. So the moral responsibility of this sits with the shooter. Now, we can examine the isms that have affected the shooter and critique those. But what we don't get to do is blow up an entire people group or cultural subgroup into this demographic that now we are opposing as a demographic, right? The moral responsibility rests on the shooter. Loads of us believe wacky stuff, but loads of us aren't going around shooting people. And so, yes, of course, there are contributing factors, but payback is never a Christian category, right? And so, end of story.
Antichrist.
Yeah. Yep. And then lastly, and again, all this is great in theory, but I don't think people understand like how on the ground I'm practicing this stuff because of where we live, because of friendships, because of family relationships, because of like, this isn't theory for me. This is like, we're working this out in the midst of real church, in the midst of a deeply read political place, of a congregation of people Sunday who are going to be, some of whom celebrating, some of whom mad and angry, some of whom just despairing over the whole thing. How do you speak to this? Right. So this isn't, for me, this isn't theory. This is all like being worked out in real relationships. And so I think, I don't remember where I heard this, but someone made the distinction between an opponent and an enemy. And so the gospel has opponents. Paul named opponents. He's like, there are these two dudes, Alexander the silversmith, poor guy gets named. Would you like to be that guy forever? You know what I mean? So we have opponents, right? I mean, there are opponents that are human beings that oppose the work of Jesus, that are not aligned with the way of the kingdom, and blah, 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 blah. But we don't have enemies. And the difference here is that opponents are human, enemies are dehuman. They've been dehumanized. They're the reason for X, Y, and Z. They're the scapegoats. And so there is a lot of talk in the books I'm reading about rejecting the rage economy. The amount of money made by keeping us angry is, I mean, beyond reckoning. And so I'm getting to the place where I'm like you, Tim. I have to be, for work, I feel like I have to be informed. Yeah. But the ways that I participate in the rage economy, I literally think if you want to heal American culture, you remove every smartphone from every American's hand for a period of 2 or 3 years and just see what happens. Just see what happens. And I know no one's going to do that, but I just think an increasing part of Christian discipleship is going to be avoidance of social media, avoidance of doom scrolling. It out.
I don't think that's ever going to happen. But what is the sentiment within that, and how do we push towards that? Right? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, we have the same conversations in the classroom all the time, where it's like, hey, because we'll read hate or we'll read different things about social media and algorithms and echo chambers and what that means, and I have to explain what each of those concepts mean to this generation because they don't know what an echo chamber is, and et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, at the end of the conversation, I always ask them, is it going away? They say no. And I say, well, then how are you going to be the generation that changes the way we use this, or changes the way that we exist inside of it? What decisions are you going to make? How are you going to advocate within this for health? Because it's not going to go away, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So I love that kind of stuff, because it's like, we have to be creative. We have to find a way through. We're not gonna. There's no other way. The only way is through. So how do we get creative with it? How do we? I don't know.
There are loads of resources coming out around what digital detoxing looks like, or digital Sabbaths. Like John Mark Comer, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, has some stuff on that. Andy Crouch has a book called, I think, The Tech-Wise Family, and far beyond. I mean, those are just two off the top of my head. Let's explore that more, because I think number one job of parents in our world is monitoring technology and restricting its use. I think the number one job of the church is pulling people out of the discipleship to social media and into discipleship in the community. I mean, I just think, like, it's unmistakable that this whole thing has been a net horrible for human culture, for human beings, for whatever metric you want to include. So I think that's
also, was he the anxious generation also?
Yes. Yes.
So we're the generation that's over parenting, like our
in real
kids,
life,
but under parenting, because we're the first generation also that's had to navigate devices like this from the get-go.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
And creating the most anxious generation in history, which, then you look out and you see kind of how conversations and cultures unfolding. You're like, oh, you can see how it works. Anxiety plays out. But also on Wednesday, before all this happened, we were, because I do it every semester with each class, is watching that conversation with Malala Yousafzai and David Letterman, about her shooting with the Taliban. And but again, I am struck every time we watch it about her stance of fighting ideology and not fighting people, and that forgiveness is the best revenge, and that she wants to restructure the ideology that created the kid that shot her, not go and retaliate violence against that kid or the Taliban or those people. She's like, that's just violence begets violence begets violence. And this idea that we have to change the conversation and pull these narratives and ideologies at the root, I just think is such, I think it's the only way through this.
Yeah.
How we do that, I'm not sure, but that's also part of having to go through it, is that we have to be a part of changing the conversation. Yep. And conversation requires listening as well as speaking.
Yeah. Amen, bro. Amen. There's one other aspect of this that's just interesting, and I don't know what it means, and I'm not commenting on it.
Yeah.
But I don't remember ever an event like this where the next couple of days I read about the number of people being fired or placed on administrative leave because of social media posts. Yeah. So just to, I didn't go fishing for these. I don't know if the algorithm knew what we were talking about, but like there's been a whole bunch in Tennessee, but I just want to read, and I want to read a bunch of these. Fox Sports Las Vegas tweeted out, a team member shared offensive comments on personal social media. While we respect personal beliefs, we do not tolerate hate or discrimination. The individual is on leave. Another one, Lauren Stokes, executive assistant for the vice chancellor of the University of Mississippi, has been fired for sharing a post on social media comparing Charlie Kirk to a Ku Klux Klan member. Fox Nashville tweeted out, a Cumberland University professor is facing disciplinary action after posting inflammatory comments on social media following the shooting death of Turning Point CEO. Yesterday, this is a different one. Yesterday, a university staff member reshared hurtful and sensitive comments on social media regarding the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk. These comments run completely counter to our institutional values, and this person is no longer employed at a university. In Idaho, a West Ada school district employee was fired for a video celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. New Orleans, a teacher is no longer employed for saying America has become greater after the Charlie Kirk shooting. The district confirms. East Tennessee State University's put 2 faculty members on administrative leave pending an investigation into social media comments they made in the wake of a conservative influencer Charlie Kirk's murder. My daughter's college, MTSU. An MTSU employee today offered inappropriate, callous comments on social media concerning the horrific and tragic murder of Charlie Kirk. The comments by this employee, who worked in a position of trust with Dean of Students, were inconsistent with our values and have undermined the university's credibility and reputation with our students. This employee has been fired immediately. Charlotte, North Carolina, the Carolina Panthers, Tim, that's a football team, fired a member of their communications team for an insensitive post about the killing of Charlie Kirk. Also in Charlotte, an employee at Lake Norman Charter School was placed on administrative leave for posting a hateful and highly offensive sentiment related to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. In Nashville, the Metro Department of Emergency Communications is investigating a social media post linked to one of its employees regarding the assassination of Charlie Kirk. A Nashville Fire Department paramedic is on administrative leave after making a post about Charlie Kirk. MSNBC has fired Matthew Dowd about after the political analyst made insensitive and unacceptable comments about Charlie Kirk on the air. The State Department on Thursday indicated it would review the legal status of immigrants, praising, rationalizing, or making light of conservative activist Charlie Kirk's fatal shooting. And then one of the representatives said, I'm going to use congressional authority and every influence with big tech platforms to mandate immediate ban for life of every post or commenter that belittled the assassination of Charlie Kirk. If they ran their mouth with their smart-ass hatred celebrating the heinous murder of this beautiful young man who dedicated his whole life to delivering respectful conservative truth to the hearts of liberal enclave universities armed with only a Bible, a microphone, and a constitution, those profiles must come down. So I'm going to lean forward in this fight, demanding that big tech have zero tolerance for violent political hate content, the user to be banned from all platforms forever. Maybe this has happened before, but I remember like Paul Pelosi got assaulted with a hammer, and there were all sorts of things sent out by like one of Donald Jr. or something, like dressing up, like here's a hammer and a pair of underwear. And it's like, I don't know what to make of that, because I would be totally opposed to anyone celebrating the death of anybody, right? So I would agree that these are insensitive and they're harmful and they're awful. But I also see a lot of insensitive, awful, and coming out through official channels. And so I'm wondering, I'm not saying that's okay. And I think employees should have the right to, have codes of conduct. Absolutely. But it's interesting. I just have never seen after, I don't know what to make of this. It seems my initial impulse is to think that's not the problem, or the solution to the problem is as bad as the problem. It feels like
it feels reactionary rather than we're just not dealing with anything. We're just, we just push things aside. And if you can fire somebody, then you've made a position clear or whatever. I don't know. I don't know either, but
I don't either.
I don't think that any of the postures that are currently being held on large public stages are the correct ones.
Yeah.
And we need to find a different way. And this isn't working. Like this just is not working.
Yeah.
And so we're so numb to it now, where this happens. Yeah. And the fact that, some people have, I think you already commented on that news people had to say, we're cutting away from this school shooting for this shooting live on air. And someone posted, this is the most American moment ever for a newscaster to say we have to cut from this shooting to go to this shooting. And then the fact that there was another one the day after that we haven't even heard about because we're stuck still talking about this first thing. It's like we have so much tragedy, we don't have the time to talk about the tragedy or to whatever. So we have to find a different and the church has got to wake up, man. Like I agree with what you said. If the church at large really leaned into what it means to be this people of the kingdom and spread out into their communities and did that loving and did that lamenting and did that kind of stuff, I think it would have a huge impact. But a lot of the church is doing the opposite. So it's like, and I'm not saying that rhetorically. I watched it on social media posts within my own area. So I don't like, I can't condemn it more. I can't, there's no amount, but we need the church needs to come to Jesus moment.
Amen.
That's my opinion. For what it's worth, which is
there. It is.
I have a dime right here, so there you
go. Well, Timothy, Lord willing, we'll get back to the Lord's Prayer next week. We'll see.
We need it.
I'd love to know what you guys think. I think Tim and I would both know. What's your reaction to this? What did we miss? What did we not include? Because if we're all co-learning together, then what's a kingdom response look like to some of this?
And where are you seeing it? If you are seeing it.
Oh yeah, that's good. Absolutely. It's interesting. We're already talking about how to talk about it in our community.
I bet.
What's that look like? For sure.
I don't envy that conversation.
But right here, I mean, if we don't talk about stuff like that, then what's the point?
I know. It's just.
I don't know that we're going to do a whole sermon or conversation.
No, I know.
Like
it's
this
just from what I said at the beginning. I'm just so sad and tired of this cycle. And at some point, you're just kind of rehashing the same conversation. Like, here we are again. Here we are again. Here we are again. And
and
other
getting
countries
number
are
and
looking in and like, what is going on over there, guys?
Seriously. Yeah. Anyway, well, friends, thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being an amazing part of the community. Thanks for giving us the honor of taking up a small part of your week. And we're very grateful. We're very grateful. Let us know what you think. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Voxology Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is made possible by listeners just like you. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Voxology or on Tithely, tithe.ly, and just search Voxology Podcast. Links for both are in the show notes and on our website. You can interact with the hosts on Facebook /Voxology Podcast or on Instagram at Voxology Podcast and on Twitter or X, whatever it is, at Mike Erre. Thank you for walking this long road with us.